So today is the ritual of throwing stones at the devil. It's an Islamic tradition or ritual. I don't know like a whole lot about it, but I do know that it is a ritual where they are throwing stones at 3 pillars, essentially. And those 3 pillars are supposed to represent the devil. So this would be like the Trinity that, Islam is against or against the Trinity. So it makes a lot of sense that that's what they would regard as the devil, right? So what they're doing is they're throwing feminine energy because the stone's rock is feminine energy, right? Well, so the solidification of matter is feminine energy, right? Now, there's 2 different types of rocks, or 2 different natures of how a rock will show up in it as an energy, right? And so one of the ways would be a rock flying, or a piece of a rock, which would be masculine because it's flying through the air, and then the feminine rock is like a mountain or something that's stable and fixed in its position and does not move, right? And so we're throwing loose rocks at the temple, and this signifies still using feminine energy, concentrated feminine energy to try to tear down the old temple or the laws of the current temple. So feminine energy is this like the idea of Medusa's head, which is like the idea of petrification and solidification of matter, passivity, like being passive, being still, being stagnant, being holding something, having to stay in one place, because if you move, that means that things are going to fall apart because you are not meant to move. That's not your position. Your position is to stay still so that things can be housed inside of you and be able to be there and stay there, right? So we need a stable structure to hold something that's meant to stay within it, right? So we can't have it moving all around because then the structure breaks. I'm going to be explaining how that is similar to this idea of Perseus using feminine energy against the entire temple to bring it down to ruin for the purpose of being able to rebuild it back up, right? So we're oversaturating using the element of feminine energy. This is why there's like so much popularity. There's this burst of popularity of feminism and wokeism, and like leftism is very, very popular in our world right now. It's almost like a takeover because this is the idea of Perseus using femininity against the establishment to petrify them, like to keep them from stopping him from being the mobility of masculine force, okay? So, I got cut off, so I'm gonna add this to the beginning of my video. Thanks. Of the feminine energy, which is the structure of stability and rigidity and making things jealous, or making things, the word jealous, I went into a very deep dive about the etymology of the word jealous, or how it's attached to the God of the Bible, which is Yahweh, the jealous God. He calls himself the jealous God because he makes things jealous, right? He makes things possessive, which is like the idea of rigidity. And Petra, Petra is about the rock that's the rigid rock. That's the feminine energy. The feminine energy, anything that is within its power, it transmutes or it alchemizes to represent rigidity or stability, or remaining as a foundation. And foundations don't move, right? That's the whole point of a foundation. You want a strong foundation. You don't want something that can move around, or the stability of that structure will easily fall apart, right? So this is the feminine energy on the most alchemical, in the most alchemical sense. And this is what Andromeda's, or I'm sorry, I just kind of woke up, so I'm a little bit out of it, but I wanted to say this while it was still fresh in my mind. What I was talking about was, not Andromeda, but what's her name again? Medusa, sorry. Medusa had the ability to make things firm, to make things structure things, make it hard, okay? So that it couldn't move or couldn't do anything, but be foundational, or be to stand there and hold something, right? Its job isn't to move. That's masculine energy, right? Masculine energy is meant to represent like the air and the fire, which is a quality of movement and flow and like being able to, be the mobility of the two alchemical energies of bipolarity. And so, Perseus used this to his advantage to kill the sea monster, which is Cetus, the constellation Cetus, is, the whale, right? And then that got me thinking about the whole Charlie Kirk thing with the King of Wales. And, how his name is Charlie, essentially, and Charlie Kirk was shot, at Orem, right? And that's the dragon. So, Cetus to me represents the king, okay? The whale being, vanquished by Perseus, which would be like the equivalent of Tyler, right? So the father atoning for the son, or the son atoning for the father, sorry. In that sense, using Medusa's head to petrify Cetus, okay, or destroy Cetus, the king, right? The King of Wales, or the system of the beast, the system of the structure of what was keeping Andromeda chained to the rock as continual sacrifice, because this is like the idea of sacrificing feminine energy to the chains of petrification, okay, like not allowing her to express anything except the petrified energy of the feminine, which is to not be able to move, to remain as a foundational structure for the kingdom, right? And who sacrificed Andromeda? Essentially, it was her father. Her father sacrificed Andromeda to appease the gods, to keep the gods from destroying his kingdom, right? So he essentially is the sea monster. I make him the equivalent, the sea monster, the King of Wales, the father, as the sea monster that is, willingly able to accept killing his own daughter to continue his kingdom, to ensure the stability, right? The petrification of his kingdom, or to raise up petrification as the highest and most important aspect about maintaining his power in maintaining his kingdom, so that it doesn't fall into the hands of other forces like the air or the fire. This is why the air and the fire is usually seen as the enemy or the usurper of the father, because the father wants to keep maintaining this aspect of the feminine not expressing anything except materialism, the property of gross matter, right? Matter becomes gross because it becomes gelatinous, it becomes congealed, and the word congeal is connected to the jealous god. It's named after the jealous god because, like, it's the idea of the jelly, right? Turning things into petrifying air and fire into matter, like bringing it down, forcing it down into like the thicker qualities of matter so that it can become visible and it can become a structure, right? And then that structure is stabilized by the act of it meeting feminine properties like water and earth. So the King of Wales is Cetus, the sea monster, right? Who is continuously sacrificing the feminine energy. And then Perseus is like the idea of, because also Perseus was given the shoes of Hermes, okay? And the shoes of Hermes. Hermes is the god of air. He's a prince of the air, right? He is Gemini, and Gemini is an air element. And so, Perseus, he not only got rid of the competition, which is his father, and I think, the constellation, I can't remember what the name of the constellation that actually represents Andromeda's father, but I think, Andromeda's father's name means gardener or something. So, like, the gardener is like the keeper of the garden or the earth, right? So, there's no way you say that. The father is the gardener, right? And then the son comes in and, uses the petrification of, Medusa's head, the qualities of her head. He uses it to, become the fastest, or become the one who, is the only one that's able to, free Andromeda, because Andromeda makes it so that you can't do anything, right? Except just be a pillar. Your only job when you're petrified is to be a pillar, to just stand there and hold something. You're not allowed to move, because if you move, you are putting the structure in jeopardy, right? And so he uses this against the kingdom, right? He uses this energy of petrifying the father so that he can become the heir. So he becomes the representative of masculine energy, because masculine energy is air. If a man is petrified, then he becomes feminized. And I'm not talking about, like, in a sexual sense, I'm talking about in an action sense, right? Because male energy equals action. Their energy always equals movement and action, no matter if they're man, no matter if they're physically man, just our physical actions itself represents masculine energy. So we all perform masculine energy when we move around, when we walk around. That is literal masculine energy, right? So, making him unable to do anything is that idea of petrification. But also, then he properly represents masculine energy, because number one, he has the sandals of Hermes, which makes him the messenger. Messages are about movement, moving around from one point to another, right? And he represents the air. He represents moving, venting messages through the pipes or through the instrument to alchemize the feminine energy so that it can be shaken from its petrification, right? We are shaking the pillars of the feminine energy so that they break and that they move. And then it crumbles the kingdom of this constant sacrificing of the feminine energy to remain strictly feminine. There's no adding of any masculine energy, or like, it's trying to keep the structure so feminine that there's no masculine energy to challenge that structure, right? So it's like turning all men into feminine energy, basically, is the idea of Medusa. That was what her curse was, right? Her curse was, and that was his